Hi, everyone. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and pay our respect to them, their culture, and their elders past and present. Stephen, Hunter, and I, and Henry are joining this meeting on the lands of the Wurundjeri, Woiwurrung, and Bunurong people of the Kulin. So, good evening, everyone. As Henry said, I'm Isabelle. I'm the Head of Communications and Marketing at Swiftfox. Swiftfox, if you don't know, is a campaign CRM that helps organisations talk to their audiences at scale. And I'm joined, as you said, by Hunter and Stephen, who are both Coder Academy graduates, which is very exciting. So the topic of this webinar is obviously how to thrive in the startup ecosystem. And it's a topic that means a lot to our organisation, but we also think it should be valuable to you all because it can sort of help you with your job search, give you a sense of whether it's for you or whether conversely it's not for you. A startup culture is something that we've all kind of got images of in our mind. You might think of, I don't know, Silicon Valley and tech bros and hoodies, but essentially it's where an organisation is on their development journey. And so it's usually organisations that are earlier on in that development journey. For Swiftfox, we're further along, but startup culture is something that's really, really important to us because it means that we are always thinking about maintaining the thing that got us where we are in the first place, which is collaboration, which is openness, learning, and sort of a flatter hierarchical structure. So we might just get into it. Stephen, did you originally go, I want to work in a startup, or is that something that, took you by surprise?
No, I really just kind of got lucky. I feel like I landed in the exact place where I belong, but I didn't know that I wanted to work in a startup environment. Um, I guess when I was looking for a job, it was a bit tough. Like there was a lot of people looking for jobs at the time, and there wasn't a lot of jobs going around. It was the end of last year. It was a little bit of a tough market at the time, and so my priorities were more about just finding something and getting any sort of experience. When I did see the job ad for Swiftfox, I was pretty excited about the tech stack and like the parts about the company culture and stuff. Um, I guess you take that with a little bit of a grain of salt because a lot of job ads say that. So, but I didn't really pay too much attention to the startup part of it because I maybe at the time still didn't fully understand what a startup was. Um, but having said that, and now being where I am now, I definitely think I just lucked out and ended up in the exact space I should have been in. And we'll talk a bit about that in further on. But yeah.
Hunter, what about you? Was it kind of a matter of luck, or was it something that you were thinking about a bit more consciously?
I would echo a lot of Stephen's sentiments. It was very similar. I didn't really have a specific idea in mind, and because I'd sort of come out of learning so much in such a short time, it was sort of hard to be specific about what I wanted. Having said that, I'm in the same position. I have discovered that working as a full stack developer at a startup is exactly where I belong as well. And it was great because Coda prepares you to work as a full stack developer. So it kind of felt like this continuation of sort of what I was already doing. And outside of that, it was the culture of Swiftfox that really appealed to me. The sort of people first and yeah. That's kind of what sealed the deal for me.
Okay, great. Think the people first, it's sort of part of the startup culture, but maybe we're just lucky with that too. You both mentioned your jobs as full stack developer. I'm not sure where everyone is in terms of their Coder Academy experience, but might be worth giving a bit of a definition of what a full stack developer is. Hunter?
Yeah, so you've got a front end developer who works on everything that you see and interact with. And then you have a back-end developer who works on everything that you don't see, so like the database, and a full stack developer works across both. So you're kind of across the whole sort of life cycle of the application. And it's really great because it helps you build a skill called context switching. So you are able to switch mindsets and, think according to what language am I using, what environment am I in, am I in the front end or the back end? And I've found personally that's a very important skill to develop. And I think being a full stack developer really allows you to hone that skill.
Yeah, great. Do you have anything that you want to add to full stack development? I feel like Hunter covered it pretty well.
Yeah, no, that was a very good description of full stack development. I would just say to the people watching, like you at the point where you're at right now, I wouldn't worry too much about trying to decide whether you want to be, front end, back end, full stack. Luckily, you're going to get a kind of full stack education at Coder Academy. But I wasn't sure. Like, I was a bit worried about it. Like, maybe I'd be pigeonholing myself if I focus too much on front end, or if I focus too much on back end, or maybe I wouldn't get good at both if I stayed with full stack. But I think as a junior, you'll get to actually, especially as a full stack engineer, you'll get to have like a bit of a taste of both. And, maybe in the future you might decide to go down one of those paths and hone your skills in an area, in a specific area rather than others. But I think with the full stack development, you just kind of get a taste of both. And you also, as Hunter said, you get to learn to kind of do the context switching, and you get good at sort of picking up new skills and doing different things. So,
Okay. Did you, when you were sort of looking for different jobs, did you have a sense of like what the, do you have any expectations for Swiftfox when you came in, or for a smaller organization? Did you have a sense of what it would be, and is it what you expected, or is it different? I'll just go Hunter and then Stephen.
Yeah, in terms of the job, I didn't really know what to expect because it was my first job as a developer. But in terms of the culture, definitely, because you sort of get what you can garner from the interview and the ad. And for me, my expectation of the culture has been met or exceeded. It's a really, really wonderful place to work. Something that comes to mind is that we had a 3-month check-in after I had started, just to see how I was feeling and what my goals were, and that was very valuable to me and meant a lot to me. So it has absolutely, met my expectations, if not exceeded.
Oh, that's good. Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, basically agree with what Hunter said. I think there's kind of two sides to it when you're getting into your first job in development. There's like the company's expectations, the company that you're about to work for, and then also just the general day-to-day job. The day-to-day job, I had no idea what to expect. Like, even thinking back to where I was like this time last year, getting close to the end of the course, I'd learned these frameworks and these languages and all of these tools and stuff, but I still had no idea what am I going to be doing each day? What is a day in the life going to look like? And so, yeah, I really didn't have many expectations there. I think we'll talk a bit about that later on. But in terms of the company culture and like what was in the job ad, and I had some expectations there around the culture, and it has definitely lived up to that what the job I applied for. Kind of going on from what Hunter said, like our team lead really cares about like our health and our happiness, and she encourages us to sort of, take breaks when we need to take breaks, and go get some fresh air when you need to get some fresh air. So it's like, it's a really good environment. But also just the company, encouraging you to learn new skills and to sort of get increase your core knowledge base and really focus on developing yourself, while also helping build out the product. That's been really cool as well.
Yeah. Some of the things that you touched on there are kind of core to what a startup culture is. So things like the learning, and just I suppose like checking in on everyone's individual processes, and making sure that everyone's okay is part of that, and is part of the collaboration. There is that distinction between what a startup is and what a startup culture is. The values of startup culture or how we frame it is that it's making sure that we're keeping that kind of learning, discovery, collaboration alive. And obviously, if you're completely burnt out, that's going to go away pretty quickly. You also touched on this idea of what a typical day is. I think everyone listening is like, well, what is a typical day? Hunter, do you want to sort of talk people through what a typical day in your full stack developer life is?
Sure, yeah. So we have a work from anywhere policy, but we do have an office in Cremorne. So you sort of have the option of where you want to work from. We have what we call a drop-in channel in Teams. So it's basically a meeting that stays open all day. So it's to simulate an office environment, which is a really, really good thing because you can troubleshoot, you can pair program, anyone who can give you input on a solution that you're looking for. It's a really, really wonderful collaborative thing. And so that starts at 8 a.m., which is around when I tend to start as well. And at 9:45 every day, we have what's called a stand-up, where every individual member of the team will stand up and talk about what they did yesterday and what their intention is for the day. And we can talk about any blockers we've met. And also that's another really good opportunity to, if you need to pull in some help to get past a blocker, or you need to talk through a problem, or it's another very good opportunity to talk about it. So that goes for about 15 to 20 minutes. We work off a ticket system for our tasks. So I believe, I'm not sure if you guys are still using Trello, the project management board, but it's very similar. So we will divide our work into tasks, into tickets, and we'll just work through those tickets. And sort of as a more macro perspective, we work in sprints. So we follow an agile methodology. So those sprints are across 3 weeks. And we allocate tasks for those 3 weeks. And then at the conclusion of each 3 weeks, we have what's called a retrospective, where we look back on the sprint and we figure out, what did we do well? Where can we improve? Any ideas for the next sprint, which is another really wonderful collaborative aspect of what we do. And it just continues in iterations like that. So after the stand-up, I've got my tickets and I'm kind of, just in the zone coding for however many hours. And then once you've sort of completed your task, you make what's called a pull request. So if anyone here has worked collaboratively yet, you've probably come across a pull request. So we will work off what's called a branch. And once we're done, we will request to merge our work into the main code base. And so we push our changes. It gets sort of peer reviewed by other developers, by senior developers. There will be comments, questions, suggested improvements. So you will make those changes, push up your changes, and that cycle kind of continues until your code is refined and ready to be merged. And then you do a little celebratory wiggle and move on to the next task.
That's great. Thanks for that. I like the idea of the celebratory wiggle. Listening to that, you get a real sense of just like things like pull requests and having everyone review your work. I imagine, imposter syndrome would come up quite a bit. That sense of being reviewed by your peers and probably people with a lot more experience as well. How do you manage, Stephen, you're nodding, so how do you manage those feelings and and just that feeling of imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I'd first off just point out that I feel it all the time, every week. I felt imposter syndrome during the course, after the course, and then, getting into the job as well. And I think there's a lot of research that shows that it's pretty normal for most people to feel it at some point. I'm trying to think of what is a really cool sort of, like, what would I have wanted to hear at this point last year when I was still in the course? And I think what I know now is that what we do on a day-to-day basis is not that different to what you would be doing in the course right now. And what I mean by that is you get given a task when you get given an assignment, you don't know the answer straight away. You don't know how to do it. Maybe you do, that's great, but there's a good chance that you don't know the solution straight away. So what you're probably going to do is do a bit of research, maybe Google it, maybe ask your teacher a question. It's the same for us. We get given a task, we do a bit of research, we find out what we need to know to get this task complete. Maybe we go ask a senior developer or our team lead to get a bit of help to get their perspective on the issue, and then you have a crack, just like you do with your assignment. You guys hand in your assignment and you get some marks. We do a PR and we get some comments on our PR. We go back and we improve our code or fix any mistakes, and then at the end of it gets merged in and you get a new task, just like you guys get a new assignment. And the reason I want to make that analogy is because it's not as scary as it seems, and in fact it's quite normal on a day-to-day basis to not know the answer straight away. As a junior developer, no one expects you to know all of the answers, trust me. In fact, it'd be weird if you knew all the answers. So I guess I'm saying this because when I was going to the job, I was quite scared and I had a lot of imposter syndrome because I felt a little bit more comfortable coding and I felt quite comfortable, with React and the framework. But I was so scared about like what the actual job was going to be like, and like, merging my code into the code base and what expectations are they going to have of me as a developer. And yeah, it's really not that different to what you guys are going to be doing throughout the course. And also, I'd just like to say that like it doesn't, I don't know if it really goes away. Like I feel like imposter syndrome is just this thing that might creep up. Like I still get days where I might spend more time reading code than actually writing code because I'm just trying to understand like what the heck all of these thousands of lines of code mean so I can do my task. So like I think it's normal to feel a bit in over your head and feel a bit out of your comfort zone. That's normal. It's healthy. It just means you're being challenged. It means you're learning. And in a startup, like that's what it's all about.
That's great. I love the analogy, and it's so true because it's just this idea that we're constantly learning, and of course that mirrors all learning environments. Hunter,
I
do you
just
have
saw
anything?
I saw Luke's comment saying you felt comfortable with coding. Like I over exaggerated that a little bit. I wasn't comfortable, but you'll learn a lot of code, but you'll still feel like at the end of the course, it's like, but what's the job going to be like? That's kind of what I meant.
I love this, Steven. You just made everybody feel way worse. No, I'm totally joking.
Maybe worse now, but later on when they're nervous, they'll remember Stephen's wise words. Hunter, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's once again, I would echo everything Stephen said. And I very much feel that imposter syndrome is at its worst when you expect yourself to know everything, because you sort of expect yourself to know everything and then you assume that everybody also expects you to know everything. And that's a lot of pressure, a lot of pressure that, yeah, I wouldn't say exists. I think having a growth mindset is really important. And a lot of this, it's so easy to say, but it is a matter of perspective. And I find that it can feel really good to get your code reviewed, and to get comments and to get feedback, because you kind of you put everything that you have into your task, you put everything that you know into your task, and then you get your code reviewed. And I sometimes find myself thinking, I'm actually excited. Like, if there's a better way to do this, I want to know. And then I can actually take that and apply that to my next task. And it's actually really exciting to grow, but yeah, imposter syndrome is a very real thing, and a very steep hill to climb. But it can be climbed.
Oh, wow. How motivating. That's great. So I just want to sort of get some advice for people listening into this. Obviously, we're hearing a little bit about growth mindset, but what are sort of some key things that you think people need to, or skills that help you thrive in a startup culture? Obviously, you guys are both doing really well, so what pieces of advice do you have?
I think, again, just trying to think of some practical things that I could have used, a year ago when I was doing the course. One thing that's really helped me was, I guess, during the and not everyone right now in the course has unlimited time. I was lucky to have quite a bit of time, free time, outside of the course. And one thing that helped me was kind of learning around the subjects that I was learning. And so one piece of advice would be to just kind of be as curious as possible. If you're learning something and you want to go down a little side path, go down that little side path. I think every little bit of knowledge you can get now is going to be really valuable. And also, we've said it before, but getting used to context switching, and you will get used to this, jumping from term to term, learning different frameworks and tools, just getting comfortable with context switching, but also not shying away from just going down a side path and learning some other technology. For example, for one of my assignments, I wanted to do a chat app. It was not required of us to use any extra packages, but I really wanted to learn Socket.io so I could build this chat app. That turned out to be a really good choice because one of the first features I was building out in Swiftfox had chat functionality in it. That's probably more of a bigger example, but it could be anything. You could be learning CSS right now. You could be learning Python or React. But if you feel like maybe you want to learn around the subject and go down a different sort of side path, I'd really encourage it. And don't underestimate the skills you're learning now. Just because you're a junior, it doesn't mean you can't bring fresh knowledge to the startup.
Yeah, it's there's an expression in sort of startup land, which is like, if you have a skill, we're going to use it. And I think that's very true. And also in terms of curiosity, that's actually something we look for. That's in our kind of our rubric when we're hiring. We want to make sure that people are really interested in things because we know that's going to hold them in good stead. Hunter, did you have any other pieces of advice that you want to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. Once again, 100% agree with Stephen. I think the mental flexibility is a very big thing. And I remember throughout the course, I was like, how am I supposed to retain all this information? And it doesn't necessarily work like that. I think exposure is the thing. It's not about like actively holding things in your head and remembering things. But over time, you tend to get exposed to the same sorts of things. So there comes a time where this information doesn't feel as new to you, and you're actually adding on to what you already know instead of trying to take in like all this new stuff. So I would absolutely say, like, yeah, as a continuation of what Stephen said, just let that happen and feel bombarded, and it gets a lot easier. And it's very, learning that skill of absorbing new information and applying that information is very important, I think, as a developer. The other skill that I would say is critical is communication. I think it's such an important thing in any team, I think. But I think there's a lot of layers to it because when you make a pull request, you need to be able to explain your code. You need to be able to explain why you made the decisions that you made. And so being able to communicate is a really good skill to have. Outside of that, you may not be talking to developers. You might have to explain what you've just built to people who don't speak code, and be able to convey that in a way that is easy to comprehend. And then, on an even more general scale, if you have an idea that you want to bring forward to your team, or a suggestion, or anything you want to talk about, being able to communicate it is really, really critical. So that's probably the other thing I would say. It's a good skill to have.
That point, sorry. I just wanted to say, when I was listening to that, it kind of took me back to the course, and I don't know if Irina still does the morning challenges, but we used to get these morning challenges from Irina, and they were kind of like leak coding challenges. But at the end of the day, there was this opportunity to sort of talk about your solution and explain your solution to other classmates. And thinking back, like that was such a valuable experience, like getting comfortable with talking about your code, and sort of communicating like why you chose to do it this way, and also getting a bit of feedback from others about like, you know, how you could have maybe thought of it differently. That's really important. And I guess you'll also do this when you present your assignments as well. I think we used to have to talk a little bit about our code and whatnot. Those moments, like, don't take them for granted. They're really valuable. Learning to talk about your code is a really important skill, I think.
There's a Friday wrap every Friday we have a team-wide discussion where basically developers, as the Renels, has to present to other departments. So both Stephen and Hunter are very good at explaining things in a really clear way. Also want to talk about initiative. It's obviously quite a key part of being in a startup, being able to sort of put your hand up and say, oh, I want to take this new thing on. Both of you have done that a lot. Hunter, I'm thinking about your recent values talk to all of the organisation, and Stephen, your work with Storybook. Hunter, I might start with your talk, I think, a couple of weeks ago to the team where you were basically telling everyone about values and rules, and maybe you can explain it.
So I was asked by John, who's our CEO, to just lead a session for all the departments. It was pretty much a discussion about, as departments, we each have goals, and to define those goals is really important, because otherwise you don't know what you're following. And then we sort of set up 5 golden rules for each department. That would be kind of wayposts for how we're going to make sure that we actually meet our goals, and how are we going to pivot if we need to change something. Or that was a really wonderful thing to be a part of, and I had a lot of freedom to make it my own, and I was able to talk about how it sort of related to me, and I found a lot of things in there that really resonated. So that was a wonderful thing to be a part of.
And now I think all of the departments, certainly mine, but we're using all the rules that we came up with there, and they've actually been really, really useful. So
yeah,
it's
I
an
look
amazing
at ours every day as well. It's
That's
they're actually really helpful. Yeah, when you're coding. It was a great session.
Yeah, no, it was a really, really good session. We don't want to make people feel jealous about it, but Stephen, you're doing something as well that's sort of outside of what you'd probably expected. Do you want to talk about how you came to be doing so much with Storybook and what that is? And
yeah. Sure. So if you don't know what Storybook is, it's kind of like this environment separate to the main code environment where you can kind of build out components like UI components in isolation, and you can kind of document them and build different kind of like variations and examples of them, and it creates like a nice sort of documentation, but also it helps you organize your component library into like reusable components. And what happened early in the year, I think Hunter mentioned earlier, we had a 3-month check-in where the CEO and our team lead just kind of wanted to see how we were going, see if we had any feedback or any ideas. I took that quite literally and was like, yeah, I have an idea. I'd really like to build out this Storybook thing and help document our component library and get it to a place where it's more reusable and easier for the designers to use and easier for the developers to use. So I kind of pitched that in my 3-month meeting, and to my surprise, they were both just like, yeah, 100%, when you want to start. So I do that kind of as a side to my other tickets. I also focus on the Storybook thing. But man, it's been so cool to like just have this idea and see something that might need a little bit of improvement, and just be able to put your hand up and to not kind of get shut down, for them to just be like, 100% go for it, and to actually encourage that. Like, we are encouraged to take initiative. And yeah, I think because we're talking about startups, like that is one of the best things about a startup, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We might sort of want to wrap up with any more advice that you have for everyone listening in, and just you a few years ago. What would you have said?
I would have said stop doubting yourself. I really believe you are exactly where you need to be at any given time. So don't stress if you don't know more. Don't stress if you don't have all the answers. Just keep exposing yourself to the process of learning, and learn different things, apply different things, experiment with new things. Yeah, don't stress about what you do and don't know, and what you can and can't do, because you can do all of it.
That's
I
great.
agree.
Feel empowered already. Stephen, do you have any sort of pieces of advice?
Yeah, trying to think of like again, just like I know the guys watching this are in the course at the moment, maybe thinking about going for a job soon. Um, I'd really encourage you to take advantage of everything Coder Academy has on offer, especially the part where you'll kind of talk about getting um, your what do you call them, resumes
Resume.
and your portfolios and all of that stuff, getting that sorted. Use the resources you have available to you right now. Get your teachers to look at your resumes and your portfolios and get feedback. When we were applied for Swiftfox, me and Hunter actually didn't know that we were both applying for this job. That was just a happy coincidence. But also, I think there was 3 people who got hired. So me, Hunter, and another junior developer, and that was 3 out of I think around 800 applications. So something that's really important right now is to get your resumes and your portfolios to a point where you can stand out. I know that sounds a bit daunting and a bit like scary, but I think you like everyone here is in a position where they can really like utilize the resources at Coder Academy, and you will be able to stand out if you put some effort into it now.
That's an incredible statistic, really, isn't it? Yeah, 2 out of 800 from this incredible institution. Look, I think that's pretty much it. Henry and team, if you want to have any more questions or keen to talk to everyone.
Absolutely. There are lots of questions, actually.
Very good.
And I gotta say, there were a few moments when I just smiled from one year to another, because it's amazing to listen to the journey from your perspective. We sometimes, because we do these industry talks with different topics every single time, and every now and then we bring alumni, and we don't ask them, or we don't even tell them what they need to say during the industry talk. It's up to them. There is usually a certain topic, and then they talk a little bit about their experience. And I found it so inspiring, because when you guys talked about the imposter syndrome, most of our industry talks at some point touch base on this as well, because it's super important to talk about it. Most of our students are career transitioners, and discussing this openly, and you now year later talking about, I wish I knew that I don't need to doubt myself as much. I'm not saying that because I believe that students, they walk away and they will not doubt themselves in the future, but I think what is so important and quite refreshing is that there is that vision of, I will feel better at some point. It's gonna be much better, much easier to understand the things. And even though I'm starting this journey, uh, there is a way for me to get through it, because these guys have done it in the past as well, and I really appreciate that. Look, that's let's jump into the questions right away. So we have around 20 minutes. I think that's gonna be perfect. So the first one is, through your journey of becoming a developer, what parts were the hardest, and what was there anything that surprised you the most in a positive way? And so I think what we could do, let's say the hardest first, and then kind of the one that you thought this was actually quite nice surprise. First, you, Hunter.
Oh, I would say the hardest thing is the imposter syndrome. The hardest thing is doubting yourself. Everything's hard when you don't feel like you can do it. Um, yeah, and I would say, in direct opposition to that, the pleasantly surprising thing is that like, if you had asked me a year ago if I thought I would be like working on a commercial grade application, um, I would have doubted that very much. And it's incredible, I think, what can happen when you just sort of let go, like really just let go, like, don't let that stuff crowd your mind. And it's incredible what you can actually build and what you can actually achieve and learn. So I think I was really pleasantly surprised by what I achieved once I was able to sort of focus and really focus on my growth instead of my doubts.
Right. What about you, Stephen?
I don't want to be boring, but like exactly the same. Like I guess the hardest thing for me was just becoming comfortable or learning to be comfortable not knowing the answer. Because I think that's what it always came down to. That those were the hardest moments. You know, the moments where I got really worried or upset was when I was worried about not knowing something. And you're never going to know everything, but what's hard is getting used to the feeling of not knowing something, and getting used to that feeling and knowing that it's all right. I'm going to learn this and I'm going
You'll
to get
find
to the next task and it's going to be fine. That's definitely been the hardest thing. What's been the best thing, like the most, like honestly, I've worked a lot of jobs like retail, hospitality. I'm a musician and have been for over a decade, so I've worked a lot of kind of dead end jobs to make ends meet. And the best thing about programming and programming at Swiftfox in particular has been doing something that feels meaningful. Like, you know, like we're working on a product that is actually positively helping people in the real world. And it's such a cool thing that I get to do that every day and help build this product that's helping people. And there's so many tech jobs out there that are the same. It just feels it's just this feeling of fulfillment I never had in work before that I have now, and that's been a really good feeling.
Amazing. One thing, and you guys mentioned it a few times throughout the talk. We sometimes look at roles that we do at work as a I'm gonna learn it and then it's gonna be easier, right? And I think when it comes to development, it is totally different because it's impossible for you to set a time frame of 3 years and you're gonna get everything under your belt. It just doesn't happen. And I remember last year we had people who were developers for last 15 years, and they said exactly what the person who would be in industry for 2 years said. Yeah, I keep learning. Yeah. So I think that's just so one of those areas where the beauty of it is that you can always keep learning more. And I'm sure obviously that applies for so many different industries and areas. But I think when it comes to programming, that's definitely relevant. Question number two, if you don't mind, okay, it is what is. If you don't mind me asking the person started with, could you give us some range of the salaries that you are both on? And again, I will just keep a range of the brackets that you are operating within. This question sometimes comes from the students throughout their study. They want to understand what would be, what it is like when they start as a junior developers. We normally advise them around, we see in the industry around $60,000 to $65,000. Would you guys agree? Do you think that it's a little bit different?
I
And
guess
feel
like
free not to answer. Feel free
yeah.
no
I mean,
comments.
I don't want to put any ideas in anyone's head is the thing. Like I've seen a huge range of salaries within, and I have, a family member and a couple of friends who are also in similar roles to mine, similar-ish, and it goes anywhere from 65 to 100K. And I can definitely say I'm a bit higher than 65. And I know someone close to me who has a similar job who is around 65, but I also know someone who's much higher as well. So look, I think especially for me, it wasn't really a priority right now. Like everyone's in a different situation. I understand that. With my first job, my priority was somewhere where I could be encouraged to learn and sort of improve my core skills. That was the most important thing. So I didn't worry about it too much, but obviously I'm in a position of, maybe not everyone's in that position.
Stephen?
Yeah, I don't think I could add to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments exactly. There's a huge range, it really just depends on the situation.
Perfect. Thank you for both commenting on this question. And it's a good question, relevant, obviously, especially these days. How do you feel you compare to the other developers in the office in terms of skills and knowledge? Come on, let's brag here.
Choose your words carefully, eh?
I'm the best, right?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. If I'm honest, I really try not to think like that. Yeah, I find that a little bit. I really, yeah, I sort of make an effort to focus on what I'm doing and my own growth. And I think, yeah, it's little imposter syndrome door opens when I start thinking about, the people around me and how I compare to them. And I think it's useful in the sense that you can sort of have a yardstick for your growth mindset. And certainly, like, our senior devs are incredible and absolutely people to aspire towards, to being like. But yeah, it's not something I try to dwell on outside of that.
Yeah, I'd agree. And also, like, the main difference, I mean, there's a lot of differences between us juniors and the seniors, but surprising to me, one of the biggest differences isn't it? It's not like they can remember every syntax in every code language perfectly. Like, that's not the main difference. The main difference is just the amount, like the sheer amount of code they've seen and the sheer
Yeah.
amount of bugs they've seen and like the things they've seen. And it's like they it's in everything. It's the way they kind of debug and the way they can get to the root of an issue quicker because they've done it so many times. And those are the things that I see every day, and I'm trying to like kind of absorb and learn because it's those skills that you might not be thinking about right now, but they actually like, sometimes I'll be stuck with this problem for a while, and then I'll talk to a senior dev about it, and they'll be like, "Well, did you check this? Did you check this?" And then like 2 seconds later, it's like, here's the problem, go fix it. Like, it's not like they're better at, well, they are better at coding, but it's not like there's some insane level of coding that you need to get to. It's just you're going to get better at like learning to debug and seeing different things go wrong and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think just to quickly add to that, like, experience is like the thing. I think, like, you can't replace the time spent. I think experience is an exposure. Yeah, and that's a huge difference. I think, yeah, someone who's been coding for 8 months, as opposed to someone who's been coding for 10 years. Yeah, the difference is huge, and that exposure and that experience counts for so much.
Amazing. Isabel, I have one question for you. From the perspective of the organization, what do you think is the right, I would say, ingredients to have environment for junior developers to be successful? Because, it's been mentioned multiple times by both Hunter and Steven that they couldn't foresee how the experience is going to be, but they are very happy because they are encouraged to be learning new stuff. They are feeling that they are working on something relevant. Uh, the startup community is huge in Australia, and I feel I had a chance to meet lots of different businesses, and some of them openly would say, "We don't know if we are ready." What do you think? What's your outlook on this?
That's a great question. Look, I think there's sort of the hard aspects to it, or the encoded things, such as having that 3-month check-in, making sure that there's sort of individual time as well as the big drop-in chat where everyone's in, making sure that there's moments to talk to team leads and those sorts of things, so that there's always that chance to say, "Hey, I'm struggling a little bit with this." We also have a buddy program, which is quite important within the culture to create that learning environment. So you're not just going up, you're also going across. And it's much easier to ask people next to you than to ask the person above you, because you wonder, "Oh no, am I doing right?" I think the other thing that, like, we sort of have a no dickhead policy at Swiftfox, which is a bit outside of startup culture, but making sure that there's just warmth in all of our meetings, making sure that we're really clear about when we've made mistakes so that people feel like it's okay to make mistakes. And then just really being open to new ideas. that's another really important aspect to it, making sure that we're hearing ideas from everyone. Yeah.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Thank you, Isabel. Another question, very good one too. I'm just wondering if you have any advice in terms of solituring through the job search dread. I think this is a good one because I know journey of Hunter and Stephen. Obviously, you ended up at Swiftfox, which is amazing, but it wasn't all that simple from the get-go. Can you make a comment on? And look, our students mostly know LinkedIn as you knew at the time. But is there any a tip perhaps that you both can share that would say this helped a little bit?
What do you want to go, Stuart? I saw you on mute.
You go.
Yeah, I would say be genuine. I think, yeah, not to bang on about it, but that imposter syndrome, it can make you feel weird, and like I would say, don't feel like you have to be something that you're not. And don't feel like you have to know more than you do and present like you know more than you do. I would say, you know, if you're interviewing, just be yourself, like make a connection, and be honest. And yeah, I think that really goes a long way.
That's such a good point. And I think the other part of that is if you're being yourself and you're being genuine in your interviews, you're probably going to end up in a place where you belong, as opposed to if you pretend to be someone else and you get hired as that person, like you might not end up where you belong. I don't know if that's an oversimplification of it, but I guess also just, I mean, I hear this as like a cliche, but it really is like a numbers game. I put out a lot of applications from like, as soon as I finished the course. I think I mentioned earlier, it was a bit of a rough time, like coming out of COVID. There was a lot of companies kind of letting people go, and it was a pretty scary time to be applying for a job as a junior. A lot of people were saying like, I think this was like end of the year. So a lot of people were saying like, come back in January, ask us again in January. And I was kind of like, I'm just need something now. Like, one thing that's important in that moment, if you do find yourself in a similar situation, is to don't stop learning and don't stop building out your side projects. Don't stop the curiosity. Like just keep continuing to grow your skills, take some extra courses. There's plenty of online stuff. Keep building some side projects, because it's not only going to keep the coding knowledge relevant in your head, so you'll be better when you're in the interviews, but it's also just going to be this slow, gradual thing that you're adding to your portfolio. But really, at the end of the day, you're just going to be applying for a lot of jobs. Some of your classmates might get jobs before you, like a lot got jobs before I did. And I was starting to doubt myself, again, the imposter syndrome thing, but that's totally normal. Like it's completely random and it's not anyone's fault. It's just a numbers game. Just keep applying.
On the genuine piece as well, a really big thing that we actually look for is career changes. So I know that there's a lot of people in Coder Academy who might be like, oh, well, I did these things and they're not going to be as relevant, and this is just my little timeshare of development work. Don't be afraid to kind of craft a story about how that's helped you get where you are now. We've just gone through a hiring process and we were looking for it. So and make sure you sort of make that argument as well when you're talking to an interviewer.
The transferable skills are indeed valuable, and sometimes we have students who feel like they need to hide it because it's irrelevant in their views, and it's actually exactly the opposite. Now, I'm mindful of the time. This question is actually only for Hunter because it says, hi, Hunter. Thank you very much for explaining your day-to-day. Just a reference to the ticket and I guess the project management process. I just wanted to know, as a beginner, was the time frame given to task enough? Just asking because sometimes I think about doing X, Y, Z, but turns out X is taking me whole day, which I didn't plan. So I think it's about more like the management, time management, and facing yourself correctly.
That is a wonderful question, and a very relevant one. So it sort of depends. Like, I think we're pretty lucky in the sense that we do have we are able to estimate our own tasks, but in terms of the time taken. But I would say that that is also a skill. Yeah, don't be surprised if things blow out. I think I said to Stephen just today, every time I've said that something will be easy, I have regretted it. So I think that's pretty normal, and I think it's a thing that comes with experience too. That the more you get exposed to, the more you're able to be like, oh, I've done this before. I can quickly put it together in my head. So I think this is how much time that will take me. But just know that if it does blow out, there's a reason for that. You know, maybe something came along that you didn't expect, or it changed or evolved somehow. So I think that, yeah, that's something that comes over time, and don't be discouraged or feel like you're not good at it just because it may not come super quickly. I think, yeah, that's something that definitely grows over time.
I feel this also kind of goes into the next question, which is how do you approach problem solving and debugging in your daily work? I think some of what you touched, this base is kind of relevant to that. Stephen, do you want to add or provide any answer to these questions? On day-to-days, when you faced an issue in order to debug it and get over that problem, what would be kind of the approach you are choosing to do?
I think just realizing that debugging a problem is a skill in itself, separate to learning to code. Like it is just like this thing that you're going to have to hone and improve. Also, just use the tools available to you. I think Coder Academy actually had a talk a few months back that I went to where they were showing like the power of the Chrome console. It does so much stuff, like so much stuff. And if you can get used to like some of the tools in there, there's other plugins and stuff you can get as well. Just use the tools that are available to you. Also, obviously, there's been a lot of progression with AI recently. We don't use those tools directly in our code base, but I actually find it kind of helpful to go to ChatGPT sometimes just to get like a rough idea of something I don't know about. I don't use it a lot, but it does help me with like maybe taking something that could have taken half an hour of Googling to like literally it'll just spit out in 20 seconds, at least somewhere to start looking. So those tools can be helpful as well. But yeah, mainly just it's something that you're going to like debugging and problem solving is something that you're going to get good at as a skill itself. And it just takes time and practice.
Amazing. Hunter, did you want to add anything, or you are happy for me to move on?
Just quickly, also, know when to get up and have a coffee or go for a little walk, because there have been times where I've been sitting there going, why? I cannot see why this is not working. And then I get up and I make a coffee and I come back and I sit back down and I go, oh, there it is. You know, like knowing when to take a break and give your brain a rest, because you can definitely get too close to the thing. And other than that, just go step by step, like step by step. Just trace it and you'll eventually get to the step where it doesn't work. So yeah.
That was such a good point, Hunter. Like, if it's 11 o'clock at night, just go to bed and like start again in the morning. Like, the longer you look at a problem, the less chance you have of solving it. Like, just get some rest and look at it with fresh eyes, and you'll probably figure it out pretty quickly.
If you would have to pinpoint one project or experience so far through your journey that was most rewarding, what would it be? Background music.
That's a tough one. One like is that it? Like one project in our job, or just in?
Yeah, I think actually it would be good if for a job. But look, when I was listening earlier, not to answer it for you, but you, for example, you were talking about the latest projects that you didn't even think you're gonna be working on this, and Isabelle was pointing it out in one of the questions, right? I'm assuming that that would be bringing lots of excitement and joy for yourself, for example, because you feel that I didn't even foresee that this would be the case, and I'm working on it and enjoying it.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. Yeah, the turning point for me in that aspect was probably the first feature I actually worked on at Swiftfox, which was the two-way text capability. It's a feature you can check out on our website. And it's kind of like a live chat functionality via text messaging. I did not think that, 3 months into a job as a junior developer, I'd actually be building out a feature that would then get pushed to production and people would be using, like straight away. I didn't think I'd be contributing to the code base so quickly, and in fact, I was terrified of it. But at that was the moment where I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, I am a developer. I do belong here. So I guess in that sense, that was like a big project for me. That was a big turning point in the way I thought about myself as a developer.
And over to you, Hunter. What are your thoughts? Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I think a really big moment for me was I built the OpenAI ChatGPT integration with Swiftfox, which you can also find on our website. And I think I just remember the moment where I was finished, and I stepped back and I was like, whoa, I made that. Like, and that was a pretty huge moment for me. And I think every time you sort of get to sort of build a new feature, your confidence grows so much, and you start thinking like, imagine the things you can do. So yeah, that was kind of the start of that for me.
Amazing. Thank you. Now I'm gonna, this next question is about stability of being a junior developer, but I will kind of flip it over and ask Isabelle on this one. What do you think is most important for junior developers to do, or to present the way they present themselves when they start their job as a junior developers? Because let's be honest, not everybody's going to be successful. Not everybody's going to be doing such a great job. What do you think is the most important criteria for them to have when they are starting the journey without perhaps having the full picture ahead?
I mean, we sort of touched on like the curiosity and sort of showing curiosity as well, but the other, and communicating well. But I think that the other really important skill for developers coming in is really trying to connect with different members of the team. If you feel like you're a part of the team, then you're more likely to be kind of helped to build those relationships, to ask those questions early on. So I'd really encourage you, even if you're someone who's really shy, people will appreciate the effort of being like, if sending it a little message saying, hi, I'm new here, I saw you, I'd really like to catch up for a coffee. Even if it's awkward, people will go, oh, they care. So building up that sort of social capital, as well as obviously the skills and just putting your hand up for things, I'd really recommend that, and doing it early.
Brilliant. I hope everybody's listening. These are very crucial tips. Now, does your work involve any documentation writing? Love this question. Very important as well. We have one of the criteria when we are asking students for industry placement. We want to know if they do that, and documentation is part of it. Go.
Yes, it does, and it's great. You will learn to love it if you don't already. Documentation's awesome. It helps developers develop things quicker. So you should definitely learn to write documentation. I'm actually remembering now, like the start of the course, reading docs is so hard. Like at first, when you first start, you're like, what is this gibberish? Like, I do not understand it. But you get used to that. And with the storybook work I'm doing, I document every single component. And also, Hunter, you've written a lot of docs as well.
Yeah, I fell in love with JS docs. I don't know if you guys use that. You should absolutely use that. It is fantastic. But yeah, like Stephen said, if you document something as you build it, it's just less questions the next developer has to ask. And also, it builds your ability to communicate and explain your code, which is a win-win.
I've seen people in the comments like react to the docs are hard thing. It's hard because docs usually talk about things and concepts that you might not have learnt yet. So you go and you read some docs, and then you have to go look up these other docs to understand what those docs are talking about. And it's just this vicious cycle. As you learn more stuff, that gets easier because you actually know what they're on about. So don't feel like stupid or anything. Like, it's really hard at first. It gets easier.
Yeah, you learn to speak documentation.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now we have 4 questions. We are going a little bit over, so we're gonna power through it super fast. I know you guys have all evenings to attend to. So, what were some of the expectations you had for the role you applied, especially for startup? If you can, in just 1 to 2 sentences, feel free to answer. Hunter, you go first. Sorry to put pressure on you right away.
That's okay. That's okay. I expected that I would learn a lot, and I have.
Amazing. Steven?
I had no expectations. I think I said that earlier. I didn't know what to expect, and I'm being honest there.
Brilliant. In terms of skills and knowledge, do you feel like you knew enough from having finished the course, plus any personal learning you did? Now, I don't want to be biased, but I hope you will say, no, I didn't think I had it all in me once I graduated, because one thing that we are very open about, and what I want to make sure the students understand, you will never be ready when you graduate. That's the most doubting time in that stage. But please go. You obviously, let's say how it is, how it was for you.
Yeah, I definitely. I don't think I ever feel like I know enough. Yeah, I feel like it'd be pretty boring to know everything anyway. But yeah, I think you sort of become, like we've touched on it quite a lot, like you become comfortable with the fact that you don't know, and you learn how to learn these things, and you might apply something one day and then totally forget it the next day and have to look it up again, and it's just how it works. So you may never feel like you know enough, but that's actually okay, and you know where to find what you need to know, and I think that kind of matters more.
Yeah, I agree. I did not feel like I knew enough stuff when I started. Like, it just you never feel ready. But I don't know. Like, you'll realize quickly that as a junior, you're not expected to know everything, and that's fine. In fact, you're never expected to know everything.
Fully agree, and that's the process of learning, right? And it doesn't matter whether you are starting the journey or whether you are in the industry for 10 years. It's just gonna keep going. You're always gonna learn from other people. Look, the other question that I have here is very similar, so I will skip this one. But this one is, I don't know if you have answered to it. Did all of your classmates get job? I think that's quite broader. We would need to perhaps narrow it a little bit down. How did the guys around you go when you were finishing and when you applied for job as Swiftfox? Do you know how did they end up? What was their journey like? Briefly.
Yeah, I definitely saw a lot of people, get even placements before we even finished the course. And I saw people get jobs just after we finished, and it was pretty daunting because I didn't get anything straight away. And it was a pretty scary time because I was like, "Can I do this? Like, is there something wrong with me? What am I doing wrong?" Um, but I think, like, I mean, we had a big cohort, so it's hard to know if everyone got a job. But I think in the months after the course, it was really nice to see on LinkedIn all of my classmates eventually getting a role somewhere. And there was this kind of supportive community that kind of continued on after the course, and you'd see it in the LinkedIn comments and stuff. But yeah, like, there was a period where I was seeing other people get jobs and I wasn't getting a job, and it was a little bit of a sad time.
Hunter?
Yeah, I would echo that exactly. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. It's such a good way to sort of see how everyone's going with the people from my cohort that I connected with. And yeah, it's so wonderful to see the job notifications pop up and be like, I'm starting as a junior developer, because you went through it with them, and you graduated together, and there's a sense of camaraderie, and so yeah, it's been really good to see so many people landing jobs.
I think that's such a nice way to end this, actually, because it is all about getting a job, making sure that you secure yourself the future for yourself, right? And again, speaking from early on about how doubtful it can be, how risky it can be for career changes, I think this is perfect way to kind of end this. Thank you so much, guys. Hunter, Stephen, Isabelle, you've been absolutely amazing. We had already a few comments saying that they had to go a few minutes ago, and they were super appreciative about the talk today. And I can see that there were lots of questions very relevant to what we are going through today in today's market. So I really appreciate you taking that time and joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Bye.
Have a great evening, guys. Thanks everybody for joining, and hopefully it was insightful for you. And feel free to send me any questions if you have any additional ones. I'll make sure to pass it on to Isabelle, Stephen, and Hunter. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye bye.